am the Senior Director of Marketing and Events at ISM. I am wearing my tropical shirt. We're excited to talk about ISM World, which will be in Orlando, Florida. And I'm really excited to bring on two new speakers today that you'll have the opportunity to hear a little bit more about their sessions, be able to ask questions. And these are just two more exciting people that you'll be able to meet in Orlando, June 1st through 3rd at ISM World 2025. So before we jump in, I wanted to invite everyone who's joining us today to go ahead and say hello in the chat. Tell us where you're from. And as we go along in our discussions, it would be wonderful for you to ask your questions. This is a great opportunity for you to connect virtually with our speakers before you hopefully have the opportunity to join us in Orlando and speak with them live. So today we're going to be meeting with Brian Antonellis and Lenora Sevillian. They have some wonderful sessions that we're going to jump into that are really critical to the profession. So excited to have this discussion. Why don't we go ahead and get started? We're going to be inviting in Brian. And Brian has a session at conference that is preparing for CARB's mandate, a guide to fleet procurement planning. And Lenora is going to be later speaking to us about her session, ethical and moral decision making in procurement. So both very critical in today's environment. So Brian, why don't you go ahead and join us? Brian is leading the session on California Air Resources Board. So he's going to talk a lot about CARB in his session. But to learn a little bit more about Brian, he is the Senior Vice President of Fleet Operations for Fleet Advantage. He possesses over 20 years of experience with private fleets and has keen understanding of fleet operations, asset management, and equipment procurement. He is a certified transportation professional and has created an impressive reputation in the private fleet world, working previously at companies like Bulkmatic and PepsiCo. And at PepsiCo, he managed over 20,000 assets and over 150 locations. He's also an active member of the Technology and Maintenance Council, as well as a board member of the National Private Truck Council. So thank you, Brian, for joining us. Nice
Thanks
to
for having
see
me.
you. Very impressive background. We're very excited to have you as a speaker at the conference and very excited about your session. So why don't we go ahead and jump in the current environment today. So we've got the CARB mandate, that's coming out. There's some changes happening. Can you talk about the current environment in terms of procurement and regulatory landscape? And is more specifically what's happening in California, but also what might be happening beyond? Can you just kind of lay the land out for us?
Absolutely. I wish I could say that we've had no changes and everything's been very static. It's been an easy transition coming out of COVID into a nice smooth landing here. But we've certainly had a lot of changes lately. So if you think about CARB, I think about CARB in three pieces. There's ACF, Advanced Clean Fleet. And over the last couple months, California rescinded the waiver. So they no longer wanted the waiver. And ACF ultimately was just the way that the state was able to enforce their fleet regulations. So that was the enforcement arm. You have ACT, Advanced Clean Truck, which is still in place. They still have their waiver. That is the percentage of EV to diesel ratio that a dealer within the state of California has to sell. That was weakened a little bit when ACF went away because there was certainly there wasn't that ability to enforce or put penalties on the fleet, so people could buy trucks from out of state. So that's been weakened a little bit. And then you have omnibus, right? The reduced low NOx emissions regulation that they're working now to try to harmonize with EPA 27. And I think CARB has realized, I think it's probably time just to make it a little bit easier in the fleets. Let's figure out how we get to omnibus EPA 2027 and what that pathway looks like. And it may be just, it's only a couple years away now. So we're really going to have two different standards. So wish I could say that nothing has changed, but we've had a lot has changed.
Well, and because a lot has changed, I mean, this is why this session is so critical, is to really understand the changes, because people are probably thinking about the mandate as it was before. and working on their strategies and plans. And now all of a sudden, okay, it's changed again. So why don't you talk a little bit about what is the one thing supply chain leaders really need to understand about the timeline and what's coming next?
Yeah. So for me, it all starts in one area. It's doing your due diligence now, getting prepared, and being prepared to deal with change. So
Yeah.
if you look back at what this industry's done for the last 25 years pre-COVID, it really was you got capital approved in the middle of the year, you placed an order in Q3, Q4, you got your trucks delivered in Q2, Q3 of the following year, and it was rinse and repeat for quite a while. Well, what do we have now? We have regulatory changes, we have cost swings, right? Everybody's using the tariff word these days. So what we're going to talk about in the session mostly is what can we do today to get prepared to deal with all these curveballs. And it really starts with understanding the current performance of your fleet, understanding what it would look like if you deferred an acquisition of a truck or if you pulled it earlier, and how
Mhm.
you're going to manage all those pushes and pulls that we're just going to have to deal with. It is really the new normal.
Right.
I think we are years away from getting back to a very cyclical environment where we can think about it for a couple months a year and move on.
Yeah.
Um, I get calls from companies every day, and they say, "Oh my God, what does tariffs mean to me? What does ACF getting changed mean to me? How is this going to affect my acquisition plan?" When you do the groundwork and you understand the cost of each model year, how your MPG performance is going to be affected, how much you save by bringing in a new asset versus extending an old asset, it really becomes kind of simple. So you can start to look at some of these curveballs that are thrown towards you and say, okay, I'm going to move these 20 trucks into this state because I can now do that. Well, you know exactly how much that's going to cost you or how much that's going to save you. And it's just not as challenging, right? So it's all about getting prepared, understanding your data, understanding the economics of your current fleet. And then as these changes, whether they're regulatory, cost, CARB, EPA, whatever they are, we can adjust and we know exactly how that's going to affect your fleet versus, having that anxiety every time one of these changes comes and you're trying to figure out, okay, start all over. What does this mean to me? And what's the cost impact? What's this going to look like? No, we can make small course corrections. And if you do that, you can have confidence that you can execute your fleet plan over the next 3 to 5 years.
Well, and really speaking of change, and actually it's just kind of constant change, seems to be more of the norm. And, we all have to be agile, right? There's a lot of energy around electric vehicles, EVs, and but there's still a lot of unknowns. And what would be like one thing or one misconception that you have seen from people in terms of their evaluation of EVs for fleets?
I think it's understanding the infrastructure. The industry as a whole has done a really good job of explaining the technology, the miles, how long it's going to take to recharge the vehicle. I think that most of the OEMs have come up with models. We have our own model that shows how, from a cost perspective, you can weave it into your existing fleet. But you want to go ahead and put it in a truck, that's really an 18 to 36-month decision. I People will call me up and say, "Well, I'd like to get an EV delivered in a couple months." I can give you the truck, but we're not going to have the charging infrastructure. And for any state that has any sort of grant or subsidies, i.e., California and some of the other CARB states, the wait time can be anywhere from 1 to 5 years. So it goes back to what is your strategic plan? How do you want to execute your fleet over the next 3 to 5 years? And I think long-term planning, even though we have all this change, whether it's, EV was the big thing last year. Now you're seeing some natural gas come back in because
Mhm.
of the extensions of the infrastructure timelines. So being able to map that out is really what has, differentiated the fleets that are nervous and anxiety ridden during this whole process, or the ones that feel comfortable that I understand how this is going to affect me. Some of it I can control and some I can't control. But if we have a good long-term plan, whether that includes alternative fuels, simply diesel, but it's time to put that plan together. And when you do that, I think you just leave there going, okay, I can deal with these challenges that are coming towards me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a lot about risk mitigation, right? I mean, that seems to be everybody's looking at risk and resiliency right now. And so your session is gonna obviously you're gonna dig deep into a lot of these sort of issues in the current environment and thinking ahead on strategy and talking a little bit about tips for that strategy. So I wanted to see, can you give our audience just one little tip that you would be sharing in this session, just so they can get a little taste of what they would learn?
Absolutely. We're going to go really deep on what's the work you can do leaving the session today to make sure you're in a good position to be successful over the next 3 to 5 years. And if you don't understand what that work looks like, you're going to leave with examples of fleet lists, how to calculate your miles per gallon and the cost that goes along with that, and understanding your maintenance cost. Vehicles have a life cycle.
Yeah.
So you can go anywhere from 2 cents a mile from on your maintenance in year one up to almost 20 cents per mile
Mm.
in year five. And so when you think about transitioning vehicles in and out of your fleet, and you think about how you set up that plan, you have to understand that cost. And that's so important. So we're going to go deep on what that looks like, how you can get your data prepared, how you can understand the economics of your current fleet, and how we can deal with some of these challenges that are coming our way.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Brian. And really excited about your session. And hopefully, some of the folks I know are really excited about this session because, logistics is a critical component, obviously, of the end to end supply chain. Having your procurement strategy for your fleet is critical. So, really appreciate you guys coming to speak at the event. I'm looking to see, is there any other, so tell me a little bit, let's have a fun question. What are you looking forward to at ISM World 2025
I'm
as an
looking for
attendee?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting some feedback and understanding how some of the fleets are dealing with these challenges. So it's
Yeah.
not it's we're thinking about it from an asset standpoint, but we've seen great turnover and how we go to business, how we still have a driver shortage or a turnover churn rate that we're trying to work through. We have really a lot of technology enhancements from the maintenance side. So it's not just one piece. I mean, the asset strategy is important, but I'm looking forward to listening to some other fleets and understanding how they're tackling some of those other challenges.
All right. Thank you so much, Brian. Again, what we're going to do, folks, if you've got questions for Brian, please put it into the chat. We'll invite Brian back to the show at the end to answer those questions. And Brian, we look forward to seeing you in Orlando. All right, next up, I want to invite Lenora Sevillian. She's the Director of Procurement at Nova Southeastern University. Lenora is leading a session at conference that dives into ethical and moral decision-making in procurement. Now, this is something near and dear to ISM. Over a decade ago, we actually released our ISM Principles of Sustainability and Social Responsibility. So it's very foundational to procurement. Really excited, Lenora, to talk about your session, but let's hear more about Lenora. She actually has over 30 years of experience in public and private sector procurement and product development and holds multiple professional certifications. She offers extensive expertise in contracting, negotiation, sourcing, and product development, and she's recognized for transforming procurement functions into strategic partnerships. She's passionate about talent development, succession planning, and cross-functional collaboration. So thank you, Lenora, for joining us, and we're so excited to have you as a speaker.
So thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
So you've worked in the procurement leadership for many years, and what do you think ethical and moral decision making, why is it rising in importance right now in the profession?
Well, it goes without saying, right? The landscape that we're in currently, but more importantly, it's been at the forefront for a long time. I think that it's just one of those conversations that is kind of like the passive avoidance, but that doesn't work anymore because we're talking about a highly complex supply chain. We're talking about expectations of stakeholders. We're also talking about the global scrutiny that's going on right now. And of
Mhm.
course, all of that really pushes towards more transparency and accountability. When we talk about, especially as you said, with the environmental, the social, the governance, And so all of those factors are extremely critical, and they really should never be a sidebar conversation. It needs to be at the forefront all the time, because what we risk is unethical behavior, rapid reputational decline or damage, as just the natural environment that we're in today.
And it's one thing, as we're talking about ethics, it's one thing to know understand it in theory. It's an entirely different thing when you have to make the right call under pressure. And as supply chain professionals under a lot of pressure right
Yeah.
now. So can you talk a little bit about what makes ethical decision making so challenging in day-to-day procurement scenarios?
It's exactly it's a pressure cooker, right? And
Yeah.
we have stakeholders, we have those internal and external parties that are constantly putting pressure, whether it's time, your effort, the energy that goes into the project management process, strategic planning, and then it's always the emergency. So we're always at the behest of the emergency. And so the emergency, coupled with all the complexity of the supplier relationships and our internal relationships throughout our agencies, often provides that block sometimes for the time and patience that it takes to kind of move through that decision making process, and to make sure that it's really aligned, one, with the organization, two, with strategy, and then three, while three is number one, really the ethical decision making that we have to ensure, that we're following those guidance and governance. And so
Mhm.
pressure to move too quick.
Yeah. So your session touches on some serious issues, like bribery and conflicts of interest. What are some of the red flags that professionals and their organizations should be on the lookout for?
When we're talking about our supplier community, the opaqueness sometimes of the particular entity, not having a full understanding of who you're really dealing with and do they meet the standard, when you're talking about, the background check, if you're dealing in grants, are they like, a party that we shouldn't be doing business with, a country that we shouldn't be doing business with? Changes in terms and conditions at the last moment, or not adhering to contractual terms, the reluctance to provide documentation when requested and when it's required by your organization. Those are really, the pressure to bypass standards of procurement procedure and process, but then a lack sometimes of clear policies and procedures can really, throw up a lot of red flags, because you don't know whether you're making the right decision or not, or if you're aligned, with the positionality of the organization.
Well, and you can imagine this time with a lot of change happening and people really having to shift potentially supplier relations, locations of where they're manufacturing, et cetera. Like this is kind of an underlying area that needs to be taken into account, right? So very relevant, like you said, to kind of even today's situation, even though it's one of those things that sometimes we might forget about. Talk a little bit about organizational culture. I mean, we all know that culture helps to support a lot of things,
Oh, yeah.
in order to achieve strategic goals. But let's talk about the role of leaders and what they play in building and sustaining ethical procurement.
I don't think we can say enough about that, because as you said, it really governs almost everything that happens within your organization or your institution. And it really honestly is about the leadership. Things, yes, we talk about, the grassroots, from the bottom up, and a lot of things happen, kind of organically. But ethical behavior and moral standards and codes of conduct, those do not happen at the grassroots, at the base of the organization. The foundational structure, the framework of the organization is absolutely led by the tone of the leadership, what they demonstrate as ethical behavior based on codes of conduct or codes of ethics, and then do they foster that? Is there open communication within the organization? Or is there like this muffled stance of like, oh, if you speak up, if you see something, say something, you're going to be penalized. And so
Mhm.
that is not a structure that will help your organization maintain an ethical framework.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, it takes just a second to get up in the news, on
Oh,
social, et cetera. So it is like one of those underlying hidden risks
sure,
beyond just making the right decision to do the right thing.
for sure.
Lenora, like, obviously you've got another incredible session that's going to kind of go deep into the subject matter, and people are going to walk away with a lot of valuable information. Can you give the folks joining us today just one quick takeaway or insight that you hope attendees will walk away with?
Recognizing where there's a line, right? And I think oftentimes we think about it just as compliance, but it really goes beyond that. It's about building that trust. It's about the long-term value that you bring to the organization with the relationship development, but also it's the implication of the ethical structure and how you navigate that as a professional and the power in that and the responsibility in that. And so really the framework of ethical decision making and having it be aligned with your own moral compass. And I think oftentimes when we interview, we're interviewing for the position, we're not interviewing the company to say, does this align with where I am with my moral compass? Because those
Mhm.
things do have intersectionality.
Mhm. Really great point. Really great point, Lenora. And let's toss a fun question out to you too. What are you looking forward to and as an attendee yourself at ISM World 2025?
I am an eternal learner, and so I will absolutely be partaking in all of these sessions that I can attend. I think that it's a wealth of knowledge that we all come to glean more to help us do our jobs better day to day. Help us think more about strategic positioning. And based on all of the information that our highly intellectual professionals have to bring to ISM 2025. And so I hope to walk away with a lot of nuggets that can help me to continue to build and excel.
That's amazing. And Lenora, Brian, we're so excited to have you both as speakers at ISM World. And, just not only for the knowledge that you're going to be sharing in your sessions, but also for the conversations that you're going to bring. This, like we said, the conference is one part education. It's a lot of parts networking and discussions. And we're all going to walk away, having a focused time, especially in the current environment, to have, those kind of peer-to-peer conversations and hear from thought leaders. So you can walk away with, how do I navigate? How do I solve some of these fleet issues? How do I set up a culture that meets our ethical standards? So really important topics. Really thank you both for joining us today, and looking forward to seeing you in Orlando. You can if you want wear a little bit of tropical gear. We will be in Orlando, and it's going to be a fun event too. So we're definitely going to make some time for some fun. So thank you guys. Thanks to everyone in the audience for joining us today and meeting with Lenora and Brian. ISM World 2025 is literally weeks away. I can't believe it. It's June 1st through 3rd. We're in Orlando at the Rose and Shingle Creek. If you haven't registered yet, it's a great opportunity. There's going to be a lot of wonderful people that you'll have the opportunity to meet, and we're all going to be doing things to spark genius and to do better in your job and for your organization. Until next time, I hope you all have a great day. Thank you.